Oh, you caught us grooving there to the music. What a fun time we're having here in Malmo. My name is Mike, and I'm here with Amy. We've been loving doing all of these fun little segments we had. I enjoyed that Pictionary you guys were having.
It was a lot of fun. I love a good drawing activity.
The Torterra, though.
The tree went on a bit late for me.
It did, yeah. I mean, we've had some fun with Pictionary in some other videos. Hopefully we'll see those. And we'll also be able to see more Pictionary here at the event. Spinning the wheel too. Loads of stuff going on here, but we are now going into round 8.
I can't believe how quickly the day has gone. Have you felt it just fly by the same as me?
It has been. I mean, normally at this point, we're starting to flag a little bit, but I've got revitalized energy after chatting with Gabor and also with that Pictionary there. So we're going to be going into a fun round 8 matchup. This is where it starts to get a little bit tense for the players as they are thinking about making day 2. What do they need to get into day 2?
Oh, well, there are just shy of 450 players, I believe. So we're going to be needing to get 6-3 or better for the day 2. So it's going to be tough. Obviously, they can get those points in other ways. You can get some ties and a couple of losses. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's not over yet. There's still so much to play for. So there's lots that they can do still to pull wins back.
And with there being 2 rounds left today, anyone who's got 5 wins will be looking to get that final one before the end of the day. So hopefully we'll get to see which players are currently doing well. Look at this. There's not a single player who has won all 7 games, which is quite, I don't say it's rare, because it does happen, but on this occasion, you can see there Tord Reklev at the top from earlier on stream. We've got Sigabor with that Mu VMAX. We've seen all sorts of players we can see on this top 16.
We can, and we've got some really fantastic known names up here, and honestly, these are some absolutely spectacular scores. It is unusual at this time to kind of see that everyone has lost a game, minimum, a game. And I think that's a really good sign of a healthy meta, right? You've either tied one or lost one. You've just got some ties up there, 1 through 5. You know, it's like, it's one of those things that actually, it shows a balanced meta to me. Yeah,
we've had a look at some of the meta graphs and seen where certain decks struggle against other decks, but pretty much every deck here will have a bad matchup of sort. And every deck will have its inconsistencies, because quite early on into this rotation, there's less consistency cards available. You know, we lost a lot of Bull Search and Discard Synergy and, you know, all of these different things that make decks more consistent. And there's a lot of judging going on around.
So much judging, and that's not the Professor program.
No, there's judges. And Roxanne as well. Roxanne, if it's not got a judge, it probably has a Roxanne. So Disruption really bringing those comebacks in. But we've seen a whole variety of decks. A lot of single prize decks. Lost Box and Gardevoir seems to be doing quite well.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're like pseudo single prizes, right? They require the bigger guns to help them out, get them started, get them off the ground, like go my little pretties fly. And then these single prizes shine through the kind of almost liability of the Pokemon that helped them set up. The mother bird as such is actually sitting in the nest like a sitting duck.
Well, we're going to round 8. If you saw anyone in that top 16 who's from your local area or you support, be sure to let us know in the chat. But for now, we're going to be supporting this matchup right now, a Polish player versus an English player. And that English player happens to be Kai Wainwright, one of my local players who I play on the regular. On the other side, Łukasz from Poland.
Absolutely. An interesting matchup, and unfortunately for Kai, might be a little in Łukasz's favor there, because Gardevoir can struggle against certain varieties of Lost Zone Box, but there is so much variety that we'll have to see what spice they've brought along to the tournament today that has put them up against the rest.
Yeah, Gardevoir, a popular pick amongst some of the top players in the European region. We saw Tord playing it. We saw Robin and Philip Schultz both playing it.
Yeah.
So some of the best players backing Gardevoir. Kai also one of those, going to be doing so here. And the deck for Łukasz is going to be that Charizard variant, the Charizard Sableye variant of Lost Box, which is even more favored into the Gardevoir deck. And we're looking at those prizes there, and outside of some consistency cards and some one-offs that are particularly relevant in this matchup, I think they're going to be pretty safe. I think Kai, the main card he wants to be seeing is that Cresselia.
Yeah, and the other thing to mention is that the Drapion from Łukasz is actually kind of key. That can be utilized in this matchup to knock out a larger KO of the Gardevoir.
Yeah, and typically in the Charizard build, you don't have access to that Drapion with attachments, but the fact there's one Mirage Gate here in the list allows allows for that acceleration. There isn't much energy, so there's only 6 energy, so it will be quite tricky, but it could be possible to get that drop in.
Yeah, it's not completely unheard of, even in these builds, and it's unusual to see a Mirage Gate in the Charizard build, so it's nice to see that's been considered here.
100%. So going first can be key in these kinds of matchups, but Lost Zone Box loves attacking second with the Cramorant if they can get 4 in the Lost Zone. So for Kai, setting up as wide as possible with that Battle VIP pass is going to be key. At this stage, unsure of which build of the Lost Box is going to be.
Yeah, Kai could be looking to potentially think about a Manaphy here, which wouldn't be the right call, as we well know, but Kai has no clue what variant Ukash is playing today.
Yeah, we see there the first concealed card's going to get some things out of the deck. You can see the spin, the frictionless spin of that Greninja as he turned it to the side, indicating the concealed cards was used. But at this point, Gardevoir, we know how it works. We know the game plan. We know it's going to be fast at setting up, but slow at attacking.
Yeah, absolutely. They both decks to an extent have a bit of a slow setup, but the benefit of having that Cramorant is the key to how Lost Box can get off the ground early with a few early game knockouts, or at least putting some damage on the board, and that's really crucial too with the Sableye pings. Yeah,
and with the Zacian, it's a good attacker into big Vs and Vmaxes because you can hit big numbers, but can be a liability because of those 2 prizes will be taken. But with that penny, there's a chance to heal off damage. So there's a lot to think about in this matchup for Kai to try and swing it back in favor, because it is, as we mentioned, quite a tough matchup. Chorus Experiment, however, is not what you want to be seeing as the Guardy player.
No, not this early on, making that Cramorant even more plausible. We're seeing the Manaphy. And is that an energy? Looks like a basic psychic energy hitting the Lost Zone. So even fewer energy. Yeah, there it is. Even fewer energy to work with.
Yeah, so normally one of each type of energy can be put in the Lost Zone for Sablezard. Not always ideal to do so, because later on your decisions might get tougher, but at this stage it is fine, and that Manaphy won't be needed in the matchup at all. So what we're trying to see here is that Cramorant attack early on for Ukash. I think, is it in the hand there? It might be.
I think it might be. I think I saw it, but it's whether they can switch into it. Oh, and a Fog Crystal going into the discard, into the Lost Zone, sorry, from the Flower selecting, going for a Nest Ball. Here we are. So either another Comfey or a guaranteed Cramorant might see the bench here, but Ukash is obviously going to use it as an opportunity to search their deck and figure out if there's any important missing puzzle pieces.
Yeah, we said we could see a Cramorant in the hand there going, oh, that's a water-type Pokemon. The Manaphys are in the Lost Zone, but there's actually 2 Manaphy here in Ukash's list. I think there might have been a Cram or the Manaphy in the deck there. Not quite sure which of the water types is in hand, but one thing's for sure, another card needs to go to the Lost Zone, so Comfey is necessary right now.
And there is a Cramorant in the prize card, so that one will be attacking later. Certainly not now, but they've decided to go for a Comfey to get that Lost Zone truly online, as they will need one more card in the Lost Zone for Cramorant to even work.
100%. So at this stage, Ukash is got a game plan, aggressive early, try and take as many routes out as possible. There are 3 currently in play. Kai will be looking to attack with Zacian early and heal that damage off. So it is very much about the tempo at this stage, and typically Lost Box does tempo in single prize matchups best.
Yeah.
That's its greatest strength, almost like a gatekeeper of the single prize decks in the format. So Lost Box right now trying to show exactly why that is, as I think that is actually the Manaphy there. Yeah, so the Manaphy in hand needs to find a Cramorant and a switch out to get that attack off.
Oh, or they might not be taking it. No, they pass the turn over to Kai, and Kai is going to rock and roll with Gardevoir. They might be able to get an attack off this turn depending on their draws.
Okay, so going to get that Luminion down. Lots of different supporters typically played in Gardevoir, many one-offs. Worker, Miriam, Roxanne, 2 boss, a Penny, a Judge, but that one Judge might be the card being searched for here, just to disrupt that hand and try and start this back from the beginning and try and get those attacks off with disruption.
Absolutely, and we know how much Judge can affect Lost Box decks. Their whole thing, their whole reason for being is constructing that beautiful hand, making sure that they have the next few turns planned out well in advance and then executing them with perfection. But in this instance, Kai's going to say, no, slow down. Here's a Judge. see if you can deal with that. And if Ukash can't bounce back from it, then Kai is really going to run away with this.
And judges are most effective when the board is not very developed for a Lost Box player, because if a knockout is taken here by Kai, there is only going to be one combo in play and whatever's in that 4-card hand. So a lack of development on the board, a lack of development in the lost zone, going to limit Ukash's ability to take prizes.
Absolutely. You never score on the shots you don't take, and Kai is taking the shot here and calling Ukash's bluff and saying, I'm hoping that you can't come back from this. It's a very simple yet agile early maneuver to command the state of play.
100%. So we see another refinement there. Probably trying to get something to switch out here. As we know, Gardevoir doesn't play switch outs, so does need a way to retreat and just retreating into Luminion and going to be a roar of time, so no tempo there. Needs to get the Gardevoir EX into play to be able to accelerate energy to the active as well as the Zacian to be able to retreat into it to an attack. So no knockout on this turn.
Sadly not, meaning that Ukash does have the opportunity to possibly bounce back. They've managed to grab a nest ball. They had that in their hand from the judge, which is fantastic. So looks like they're opting to go for that Cramorant now. It's already live, it's already ready, and they've yet got Flower selecting to go. So they're already playing this out perfectly, but they won't be able to knock out that Luminion. So Kai's probably looking to remove the Luminion from the board later, even with the damage, meaning that it's kind of negated.
Exactly, so trying to steal a turn back. Luminion can be taken out of play with a penny or one of the 2 Collapse Stadium played. So many ways there, and with the refinement Curlier's set up, that's going to open up access to digging through the deck to find any of those options. So a smart play here to try and win a turn back, but realistically, we mentioned before, it's all about tempo in here. This is why Lost Box tends to be favored into Guardy, because it can start taking those knockouts earlier and trade better. So straight away, escape rope into the Zacian.
So Luminion's not going to take that bit innocently this turn. It looks like Zacian's going to be the first one to take the full thrust of Cramorant's signature move. Which does restrict how much damage Zacian can do, but Kai has already had a flying start with putting 3 energy successfully on Zacian already.
Yeah, so we'll see whether... so Curly are going to get rid of a research, indicating that Kai wants to try and play another supporter this turn, probably. So an energy with concealed cards.
Depending on how the turn goes, Kai could just penny and possibly set up Zacian again from scratch with a bit less damage on, because it would only have 40 damage on just to get the essential 3 to start hitting for 150 damage, which is enough to take out most of Ukash's Pokemon.
Yeah, and we see there the refinements both being used, the concealed cards being used, not much more dig now. So rare candy into that Gardevoir EX. So
lovely.
Energy from the discard pile now can be put into play with Psychic Embrace. And we see the retreat into the Gardevoir EX. One of the big advantages of Gardevoir EX is that huge 310 hit points, making it very tanky and hard to knock out for Lost Box.
Absolutely. It could be a real powerhouse in this situation. They went for the Collapse Stadium, removing Zacian out of play entirely, so now there's no damaged Pokemon on the board. And that can be one of the hardest parts of playing Gardevoir against Lost Box, and why it seemed to have an unfavorable matchup is because you're putting damage on your own Pokemon. And Lost Box absolutely loves that. Sableye comes in and mops up and takes all the KOs that you've left for it. It's just a nightmare situation. But Kai knows this matchup back to front. They're a master at their own art here. We're seeing the Gardevoir, one of the many Gardevoir masters at this event, really shine in this Lost Box matchup.
So first knockout there for the Gardevoir list, all damage removed from the previous attack of the Lost Box. And so that judge really paying dividends now, making it hard for Ukash to get going. But we will see some flower selecting here. A Raihan or a Pokegear. Tough decision. No energy to activate that Raihan, so probably going to have to get rid of it, yeah. And we're going to see Chorus Experiment could be key here, as Sableye at this stage could start sprinkling damage around.
It could, and again, that's the beauty of Lost Box in this matchup. And the threat that it poses to Gardevoir is that you can limit how much damage your opponents can do. And I imagine that's what Kai saw coming and benches the Cresselia early in response.
You can see there the dice to indicate the lost zone count, typically managed by the opposing player, because it's useful for everyone in play to know what's going on with that lost zone. Saves a bit of time as well. You know, lost box already has enough things to worry about. Having to find the right number on a dice, it's always good where the opposite player helps them out on that.
Yeah, it's kind of imperative that both players are managing the state of play and helping each other out. We have a format where there's a lot of slow decks, and we got to play 3 games in 50 minutes potentially. That's a lot to squeeze in. If you've never attended a tournament like this, try it at home. Grab a clock out and try it. It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough to fit them in. And speaking of keeping the state of play, Ukash in the last turn reminded Kai about the beach court, meaning only 1 energy was taken off of the Zacian. So anyone out there who's looking to play with friends or at tournaments, make sure you're keeping track of everyone's game. And we see there a Clara off the poker gear, not ideal, probably wanting the Chorus Experiment to activate that Sableye. So Ukash again losing that precious tempo.
Yeah, it's a lot to be said for a super friendly player as well, who remembers those things for you and can point them out. It's so lovely to see these guys just being real good sports.
Yeah, I mean,
even though the stakes are high.
Yeah, we both had experience with Kai as a player. You know, I play against him most weeks at my local, if I get to the top tables, that is, because Kai is always there. And I had it over him for a while. He'd never beaten me for the longest time. I beat him in a 32-person tournament in the final. I did have the exact counter to his deck, but I still told him I've never lost to you. But about 3 weeks ago, he did manage to get that back on me. So we're now 50-50 on that. So Kai will, as soon as he beat me, he went, I've finally beaten you. So he does remember these things.
Broken. And I had the joy of playing against Kai in a League Cup not long ago.
How did that go?
Weeks ago. Oh, yeah, not my way. Not my way.
He is good.
All. He is absolutely flawless. Every single move is meticulous. And I tell you what, though, he was one of the most lovely people to play against. So I had a great time anyway.
And I'm sure Ukash as well. As we mentioned, these guys are top players, and a lot of the top players we've been seeing on stream have been having a great time here at Malmo. Everyone being very friendly, very supportive of each other. And these guys right now know that this is an important match, a pressure match. They need to win this to put themselves guaranteed into the next day. But for now, they do have another round after this to be able to make it. So it's not all lost if they lose this game.
No, it's not all over yet, and there is still plenty of time.
So this turn, taking that Sableye, getting rid of the threat of an attacker rather than the engine with the Comphase. So Kai recognizing that Sableye could be doing some sprinkly damage next turn. And at this stage, that Gardevoir doing an amazing job in the active.
Oh, okay. That's that second energy we were talking about that's kind of safeish to put into the lost zone there with the fire energy going. So... but there is one in hand still, and we've got Holucha, which is really interesting against Gardevoir and could be one of the pinnacle cards, which could swing this back in Ukash's favor by popping 2 sets of 10 damage counters on benched Pokemon from Kai, and then using Sableye to follow up to take hopefully multiple knockouts.
Yeah, exactly. And you see there the Defiance band going into the Lost Zone. A unique choice here, doing 30 more damage to all Pokemon if you're behind on prize cards. So very much a comeback mechanic, and it allows you to attack into EXs or just non-rule box Pokemon as well in this particular list. So Defiance band there in the Lost Zone, interesting include, and I'm sure we'll be taking it into consideration, because I was looking at that Gardevoir EX and thinking, oh, you know, they're not going to knock that out with a Charizard, but you know it's almost in range with the Charizard and normal attack 250, but with that 280 with a Defiance band, it would be a knockout.
Yeah, again, this is why it's so crucial to scatter those damage counters, but not make them look too intimidating. 4's okay, right?
Yeah.
No, 4 might be too much. So that's why Kai has to really manage their mathematics of their deck, where they put damage counters on their own Pokemon, while Ukash is going to be trying to very carefully place them to make it not look too suspicious, and then all of a sudden go in for the strike.
Yeah, that's the Sablezard way. You're thinking, why are you putting 3 there? Why are you putting 2 there? Just sprinkling, setting up for the big knockout. So recognizing that, putting the Cresselia into the active, forcing more ways to knock out the Gardevoir EX. And you can see the Cresselia is so good in this matchup. One of the reasons why it's included in the list is to start taking out those Comfey. And it was 20 damage on a Curlier, Cresselia, and that Gardevoir EX. And again,
there
vital,
we are.
healing a bit of health off of that Gardevoir EX. Very well played.
Just as we were saying, that could have been quite a punishing amount of damage on the Gardevoir EX. And now Cresselia's come and said, Moonglow reverse. Not today.
Not today.
Not today.
Yeah, very much the reverse. The reverse in this situation was key, but one of the ultimate reverses in the TCG right now is that Rock Sound. We've seen how effective it's been in all sorts of games where it's completely switched the play from the one ahead to the one behind in the lead. So we'll see how this Rock Sound affects Kai. He's done a lot of thinning, so those 2 cards with refinements in play will be potentially helping him out of this. But for Ukash, he's got the Sableye ready to go, just wants to start seeing if that disruption can win back some turns.
Yeah, and it can. That's the thing. We was just speaking earlier about how Charizard Lost Zone Box is so good at springing nonsense onto their opponent, and all of a sudden they're thinking, oh my goodness, wait, I'm not quite as ahead as I thought I was. So although it might look a bit scary for Ukash right now, I truly believe that Charizard still has many tricks up its sleeve.
And that bench is full right now for Kai, knowing that Echoing Horn could be a play, so doesn't want to give access to the Mew on the bench. Anything that could make the Horlucha super effective at taking 2 knockouts. And at this point, this, we mentioned before, is an unfavored matchup.
Yes.
Lost Zone Box with Charizard tends to beat Gardevoir most of the time. I think it's about 2/3 in favor of the Charizard box, but it's a bit under that. So a 60-40, you could say.
Yeah.
And so at this stage, it has to be played perfectly by Kai, and Ukash has to miss some beats. And we've already seen those beats missed, but there's always comeback mechanics in the Lost Zone Charizard deck, especially with that Rock Sound.
Yeah, you're not kidding. There are some really big plays that could be made on either side still that could turn things around, and these guys are just masters of their art. They know these decks back to front, upside down, blindfolded. They could probably still play this match just as effectively, I have no doubt.
So we see one of the Curlier gone, so taking away a draw engine out of the Roxanne, but there was still one refinement Curlier available. And we'll see what comes out of this hand. So you see there a level ball, collapsed stadium. I'm not quite sure what else is in that hand.
No.
Not ideal, but continuing to be able to attack is key here.
Well,
making sure that tempo's there.
But obviously with quite a small hand, they've gone for the level ball instead.
Okay, see what they get off of that. I don't think developing too much on the board right now is going to be too key for Kai. Just going to make sure that the bench is full to stop something like a Mew coming back into play. But realistically at this stage, that Cresselia and the active can just keep healing damage off. We'll be able to get some of that damage off the Curlier. We'll also be able to get some damage off of that Gardevoir EX, so trying to nullify the damage in play.
It's also really clever because Kai is still able to accelerate slowly to their Pokemon, which isn't what we expect from Gardevoir. We expect these explosive turns where loads of energy just goes all over the board and suddenly there's a huge knockout. But Kai's doing something really clever, which you see, which we hope to see in Lost Zone Box matchups, where they're slowly attaching the energy to these Pokemon, getting them ready. They don't need as much energy to be able to knock out little Lost Zone Box Pokemon. So they're able to slowly attach and then heal off the damage that they're doing.
Yeah, I think that Curlier should be down to 20 damage because there was 4 damage counters on it from the Sableye previously, so it won't be fully healed here. So we'll see if we can get that checked in with the judge. But obviously the open bench space now is also a threat because Kai might be Echoing Horned. I don't know if the Echoing Horn has been shown in the Lost Zone at any point. I'm not quite sure about that one, but a Mew could come back into play. So we'll see.
We will indeed, but to start things off, here comes Charizard roaring in, bossing the Gardevoir EX. Here it goes. They are going in for a big combustion blast attack.
So we'll see how much damage that does. It's, what, 250. There's already 2 on the Gardevoir EX, so that's going to be 270 on there, 40 left. There we go, the damage from earlier back onto the Curlier. So that Gardevoir EX is now in range of some sprinkle from the Sableye, so we've got to watch out for that. And the advantage you got with the Cresselia attack is it doesn't matter what's in the active, so you can play around it. That Charizard might end up just sitting there in the active.
Yeah, not only that, but God of War can't attach energy to be able to retreat or anything like that. Like, now God of War's not able, really, to accelerate energy onto itself. It's going to need to do things the hard way.
And this Miriam will take some of those Pokemon out of the discard pile, meaning that they can't be brought back into play from an Echoing Horn, potentially. I also think there's 2 energy attached on that God of War EX.
Oh, is it?
So it's under all those tokens.
Ooh, so it's okay for the moment. It's
Yeah.
still quite scary.
Yeah, and this is where the last few turns needs to get 2 more knockouts on Kai's side. But a God of War EX and a Routes or Curlier plus a 2 prize turn the next turn would be enough. So you can take 5 prizes in 2 turns.
That's petrifying. Could you imagine? It's always those scary moments where you think, wait, how many turns?
Yep. I guess the attempt here will be to try and evolve those Pokemon on the bench to try and put them out of range of Sableye as much as possible.
Yeah, making it really difficult for their opponent to bring that back.
Yeah, exactly. So we see there the Curlier coming down. Will improve the draw as well. And we mentioned the Cresselia attack can go around the Charizard, maybe just attacking into the Charizard to get it out of play. Force a Clara could be an option.
Possibly, but Charizard can't attack this turn, remember. It does have a high retreat cost, and Ukash has used a lot of energy already, so Charizard's ability only helps reduce its attack cost, not its retreat cost, so Kai might feel relatively safe with Charizard in the active right now.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see if looks to get the God of War EX onto the bench and collapse Stadium out of play. That would completely remove all that damage. There is 2 collapse Stadiums in Kai's list. He's played 1 of them already, and now that Zacian's in the active spot with the Forest Sealstone, so he can find anything needed. So we'll get the next God of War EX into play, and with that collapsed Stadium, that would completely remove all that damage.
It would, so hopefully...
Oh, and that's going to be a scoop there. Ukash.
No, there it is. Kai getting the first game.
And we mentioned how tough this is to play, and you saw how beautifully Kai worked his way through that matchup, using the collapsed Stadium, using the Penny to heal damage out of play. And we spoke about how deadly Lost Zone box with Charizard and Sableye can be at the end, and that's why you've got to really take that damage out of play. But let's have a look at what Kai's been up to.
Kai's been absolutely going for it this season, as you can see. 2nd place at the regionals in Bremen, 13th in Lille, LAIC 2022-23, 35th. That's absolutely bonkers. It's a very high turnout for these tournaments, remember. Again, special event in Bilbao, 6th place and 66th in Bochum recently. Those are absolutely spectacular results.
And you'll notice they're all very recent events. Kai, relatively unknown before this last year, where he's been smashing it across the board. And on the other side, Ukash at Malmo making a top 8. Warsaw in the home field advantage, making it into top 32, and plenty of top 32s there, which I think if you're making top 32s regularly as a player, it shows you have that amazing quality of a consistent player, few mistakes, all that kind of stuff. So a great player here, Ukash.
Yeah, looking at these regionals, there are definitely some in common. I wonder if these two have played against each other before.
Probably. I mean, I think a lot of the Polish players have really excelled this season. I wonder if having a regional in Warsaw inspired a lot of them to really take it seriously this season. Because I know they've historically had their Polish national tournament, which they run internally, and I remember speaking to some of them when we were out there. They have been developing very well as a region, and we've seen so many of them perform well this season. Even, I think it was Mateus winning a regional earlier this year. So the Polish players are certainly making a splash when it comes to international play, but we see there 2 Clara and the Charizard.
Oh my word! That is not ideal. Hopefully they'll be taken early and we can see a ferocious match from Charizard regardless.
Yeah, I mean, the Charizard can be brought out with a heavy ball, and being right at the bottom, it's likely it'll be taken early on. But I think really this game, what's key is the fact that Lost Zone Box gets to go first and start developing the board as quickly as possible, and that is the key in this matchup. God of War struggles going second if Lost Zone Box hits the tempo right.
Yeah. Ukash really wants to be able to make a commanding presence on the board state. Both players, their decks both work better when that first turn just goes off without a hitch. So hopefully we'll be able to see an explosive start from both players and have a real tussle for game 2.
As we mentioned, this is a tough old matchup for Gardevoir, so not the kind of game where if you see a good start from your opponent when they're going first, you just say, right, let's go last, because they know even with Gardevoir EX going first against Lost Zone Box of Charizard, it's still not a favourable matchup, so it's not an easy one just to scoop and go next. But it is also a slower matchup. You know, a lot of prizes need to be taken, and both take a little bit of time to set up. So as you can see on the clock there, that first game took a fair amount of time.
That's the thing with these two decks. Both decks are constantly looking for the breakthrough. They're looking for that moment where they can turn the tide. If they're in a bad situation, they can still bring it back.
And we see there just the one flower selecting into the pass. So only one card in the Lost Zone developed there. And we'll see how much the Gardevoir EX will set up on the board. So a Mew going to be coming down with that Fog Crystal, and likely going to be trying to find a Battle VIP pass, so key early on.
The Battle VIP pass play, we haven't seen it from either player yet. And it's so crucial to, like I said, that explosive start that we expect from decks like this, or that we hope that they can achieve. The Battle VIP pass being 4 of in either deck.
Oh, nothing there. He's going to go to the next, so no Battle VIP pass off the Mew.
Okay.
Kai scoops and goes straight into game 3.
Again, 50 minutes for 3 games is a long old time with 2 decks that run relatively slow. Kai's made the executive decision to say, nope, let's go to a game 3. Let's duke this out.
He thought, unless this is an optimal start where I absolutely pop off with a VIP pass and go crazy there, it's just not worth it. And a slow start with Guardy going second is, in a lot of matchups, not a good place to be.
No, and I imagine Kai looked at their hand and thought, can I recover this? No, right, okay, let's go. And if you're really struggling with that hand, knowing that there were 2 Comfey on the other side of the board, and no matter what, at least they've got a little bit of extra card draw than you, like you say, it's just not worth the hassle, and it's better to hope that your deck treats you nicer in the next game.
I'm sure a lot of newer players will see someone scooping like that and think, oh, that was a crazy decision. But it's what separates some of these best players and the rest. Being able to scoop at the right time and know exactly when you should be giving up on that game is what makes your draws turn into wins, and that's why these players have had so many wins here at Malmo, and I'm sure they'll continue to do so, as both these are likely to make it into day 2 unless they lose both of the next 2 games, and we'll see whether they can secure a win here.
Yeah, I imagine at least one of them is going into day 2. Something would have to go pretty drastically wrong for that to happen at this stage. We see Kai's prize cards go down, and they're not the worst, but they're not fantastic.
No, typically Psychic Energy can be quite a threat to be in the prize cards, depending on the matchup, but because the damage output here for Kai isn't particularly high, the only downside of having less energy would be to do those Cresselia plays. Sprinkling it around might be a bit more challenging, but for the most part, the energy won't be too relevant, as there are 11 in the deck, so 9 still available, and a Battle VIP pass straight away for Kai. As you can see, the routes in the active, and this is exactly what we want to see from a Gardevoir deck.
Popping off turn 1. That's all we want to see. Now this is the match. Exactly. But Charizard's really shy. He's in the prize cards again, hiding.
And the heavy ball this time.
Oh, but, he's just going to have to come out when it's time.
Exactly. Typically, players taking prizes from the bottom, so Charizard might reach the play at the right time. You know, Charizard an end game attacker normally, but could be vital for knocking out a Zacian or a Gardevoir EX at that right moment.
It very well could. Kai really has gone off to an explosive start here with an attach for turn on Zacian and the Roar of the Sword to end the turn, meaning that next turn they will absolutely be able to attack as long as they can also retreat. So there's options. Typically Gardevoir doesn't run much retreat, but we could see a knockout on the Rolts, in which case they can at least return KO.
Yeah, and we see the VIP pass on the other side.
Ooh.
Ukash also getting a chance to pop off this turn. Can really start spiraling with the flower selectings and Chorus Experiment, especially on turn 2 like this. Well, turn 1 going second, as we see the Cramorant is the target, right? We said that in the first game. If you can get that tempo knockout with the Cramorant, it goes very much in favor of the Lost Zone box here, because 1 less route is big.
It's an interesting debacle for Gardevoir versus Lost Zone Box. Lost Zone Box favoring going second in this matchup, but then Gardevoir requiring evolutions, so going first is obligatory. It's so difficult, I feel, for both players in that situation. It was slightly unfortunate that Kai, I suppose, scooped that game, giving Ukash the decision of whether they wanted to go first or second.
Yeah, and 3 Comfey in play. Potentially a Lost Vacuum could be used to get the Lost Zone up, but otherwise a Chorus Experiment would be huge, because Chorus Experiment plus 2 flower selecting, we all know it, we all love it, into the Cramorant, spit innocently. Will it be possible here? So early on, retreat, straight into that next one. The Horlucha going into the Lost Zone, so that takes away late game double knockouts, and the Chorus Experiment comes straight down. Drapian's going to go into that Lost Zone with the fire energy. You can see these decisions are so natural to Ukash. He's just firing through this Lost Zone box.
Absolutely just going for it. And that's the thing. There's so many little micro decisions that need to be made in Lost Box that someone really has to know what they're doing, especially to tackle 9 rounds in a day. You've got to remember, they've done this is round 8.
100%, and you see that Escape Rope was the only way to retreat that Comfey there, so it does favor Kai a little bit because all of the routes are now available to evolve, and we see that same strategy of the early game judge.
Ooh, Ukash does have a more commanding board presence this time though, so maybe it'll be okay, but Kai can attack, which is a positive, and like you say, they have a really lovely bench situation right now, so hopefully this judge will serve them well.
Can attack with a Zacian here, might also look to take it to the bench. You know, the retreat out for the Gardevoir deck is to discard Psychic Energy, and they'll always be available later on through the Psychic Embrace of Gardevoir EX. So Zacian might just go to the bench to try and survive. So it'll be interesting to see how this judge pans out. So that was a refinement there of the Psychic Energy.
Grabbing it, rare candy in a Psychic Energy.
And the Shining Arcana.
Shining Arcana leak promo, might I add. Ooh. You can only get those by attending local events.
Yeah, I might have seen him pop that one out of a pack, because he's often doing well and getting those league promos. But we see the Zacian attack, very easy on the Cramorant, just knows that that's the main threat right now. There are 2 Cramorant in the deck, so there will be another one available. Clara might be able to get it out of the discard pile. But to start things off, a Nest Ball, this is likely to be that next Cramorant, right?
It's very likely, especially considering that they just put Clara in the Lost Zone earlier. So 1 is already unavailable. So they're going to need to be really careful with their resources and use Pokemon and energy before they decide to bring them back. Claraing at this stage would be inefficient, as they're not going to be bringing back multiple things. It's going to be 1 Cramorant, and it could be seen as wasteful.
Yeah, 100%. And as the Lost Zone is getting built up this turn, that's going to be key for Sableye activation in the future. So we see a few flower selectings here. That Zacian will be knocked out with the second Cramorant attack. Exact math there, 220 hit points on the Zacian, 110 times 2 will get the knockout, and the board state is looking fantastic right now for Ukash.
It really is. It's a strong commanding presence. Gardevoir can still bring it back, but 2 prize cards from a Lost Zone box already? That is impressive.
Yeah, like we said before, the end game has the ability to get multiple prize cards with the Sableye, with the Charizard into Sableye, or Sableye into Charizard, whichever way around it goes. So end game very much favored for Ukash. So to go ahead early, that's an amazing position to be. I think Kai should be able to match the prize race right now, but will be 1 turn behind in theory.
Yeah, but again, it can all swing round. Both decks and both players know exactly what they're doing against the other. There is no doubt about the direction that each player needs to take in this game. Kai will be probably aiming to go for a similar route to the very first game, whereas Ukash didn't have a great setup for that. That wasn't really what they were trying to do. It was a suboptimal game for them, whereas this time it's been going flawlessly.
As mentioned, this is a sort of 60-40, maybe 65-35 matchup. So for the Lost Zone box of Charizard, that kind of matchup spread typically means that they can win a best of 3 most of the time. So going into this third game, it is favoured into Lost Zone box. That first game, as you mentioned, suboptimal. And it was so much about that early Lost Zone. It only got up to 3 in the first turn, so no Cramorant attack. And then that's where the 1 turn goes in favour of the Gardevoir deck. And with all of those Clap Stadiums and pennies, it starts to starts to pick up the pace.
God, that is the masterful art of being a fantastic Gardevoir player, though.
Yeah.
Being able to know exactly when to play those outs is just fantastic. The knowledge and the expertise, just the experience that it takes to time that right against a not great matchup for you. Whew.
Yeah, we see the Cresselia. One of the big advantages of Cresselia is being able to heal damage off of your Pokemon. But another wonderful thing about Cresselia is 120 hit point Pokemon. We know typically Greninjas, Radiant Greninjas, are quite good at taking a Cramorant hit. Cresselia also very good at doing that. And like we said before, there's ways to heal damage off of Pokemon by discarding them with Clap Stadium or picking them up with Penny. Taking a knockout here with Cresselia and baiting out another Cramorant hit could be good, and also leaving the Cramorant in the active spot will mean that a Comfey would have to be switched into. So just increasing the amount of switches that are needed as a Beach Court in play, so it would need to be a retreat as well.
It would. You can see a lot's going on right now. We're going a little bit, there we go, a little bit flustered there, but we're okay. And there's Cresselia aiming and championing down that Sableye, knowing that it's the main threat on the board.
100%, and as we mentioned, Cramorant left in the active, so you start thinking, do you retreat out of it to start those flower selectings? As you can see, that's happened. Ukash has to get to 10 in the Lost Zone as soon as possible to try and get the Sableye available as an attacking option. Another Sableye going to be found here, put into play. And this is going to be the scary point where Curliers and Routes start being targeted. No Hawlucha, but still a lot of sprinkle damage.
There is a lot. There's a little bit of damage on Gardevoir EX, self-inflicted, I might add, but not too scary yet. But it depends if Ukash decides to start sprinkling damage, or whether they're going to have to try and go a bit more aggressive on that Cresselia for their damage to make a difference.
Yeah, we shall see. And the Sableye is in the active spot now. And 7 in the Lost Zone. And a scratch. So a scratch on the Cresselia will put it in range of a Cramorant. But that's really interesting to do it that way, because it's going to be able to heal it off next turn with the...
with Moonglow Reverse.
Yeah, with the Moonglow Reverse.
Yeah, without doing more than 20 damage to any of Kai's Pokemon. Unfortunately, it's just adding fuel to the fire almost with giving Cresselia the ammunition to be able to do a larger attack without Kai having to put energy unnecessarily onto those Pokemon.
I wonder what's going to be attacked here. I assume the Sableye to try and get that out of play. Could target the Comfey to try and reduce the amount of flower selectings available, but I should imagine next turn Ukash will be able to get into the range for Sableye, so 10. So we'll want to try and get rid of that Sableye as an option.
Yeah, it would be very typical of this kind of stage with 7 in the Lost Zone to be able to achieve the sacred 10 that we need for Sableye. And so yes, Kai went ahead and Moonglow reversed straight into the active Pokemon Sableye, leaving Ukash to begin their turn with a Comfey, flower selecting, retreat with a Beach Court, and go for the Cramorant KO just as predicted.
With the Defiance Band, so that's exactly why a Defiance Band is a fun include in this list. Allows you to get that 30 extra damage against all Pokemon, not just particular Pokemon as we see typically with Choice Bell or Cleansing Gloves, for example. So on this occasion, doing 140 with Cramorant thanks to that one prize difference.
Yeah, Defiance Band's an interesting card because we haven't seen it a lot in kind of the clear meta decks before. It's quite often been more likely Choice Belt has been an inclusion, but we see more and more players, especially at this event, changing those out for Defiance Bands now just to be able to have that comeback mechanic.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder which lists would really favor it. I guess Lost Box makes a lot of sense because it can give you an advantage in the mirror. And it can give you an advantage, especially with the early flower selectings building up the Lost Zone whilst not taking knockouts, where a lot of decks right now, their way of beating Lost Zone box is to keep tempo up early and stay ahead. So the Defiance Band will often be active in those cases.
Yeah, I think it also would swing the prize trade possibly in the Greninja build battle against this Charizard build. Being able to knock out things like Greninja with a Cramorant is huge, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, not many people see Greninjas getting knocked out by Cramorant, so Defiance Band, very fun include there. And we saw it being in effect against the Cresselia. And so Refinement being used here. We see 2 Gardevoir EX in play. To knock out both of them will be incredibly difficult and not very good for the prize map. So I think what we'll be seeing is trying to get that lone Curlier, the easiest target, try and get that evolved up for Kai to try and put as much HP in play for Kai in this next turn.
Yeah, it's going to be really essential for Kai to just now grind those Pokemon up to their fully evolved forms to give them as much HP as possible, making it maybe too difficult for Ukash to come back from this now with only 2 prize cards left to take, using those refinements before Kai evolves them to thin the deck. Thinning is winning, getting those Curlier evolved, but not too early. They want to be using the refinement because it's their main draw engine.
Right, so I think now Ukash is looking to find that Clara. You got Cramorants and Sableye in the discard pile, but at this stage a Charizard attack might be required. If you get the damage on the Gardevoir X in the active spot with a Sableye on the Curlier, that would be good, but ideally you want to do it the other way around to guarantee the knockout on the Curlier before it evolves.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pickle. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what Ukash decides to do. They're the master at play, after all. They
are. So the Pokegear, they're probably looking for a Clara. I don't know if there's a Clara in hand, maybe a Clara in hand as well, and this is all just thinning. But as we mentioned, this is a tough old matchup for Gardevoir. It's really trying to force in its favor at the end here with these big Gardevoirs to try and take hits. Not much damage in play throughout this whole game as the Cresselia keeps removing it with the Moonglow reverse. So quite tense here, and plenty of time to play it out as well, which is exciting.
It's not very typical for Gardevoir to have no damage, but lots of energy on the board, so it's an interesting sight to see, but Lost Zone Box almost allows them the time and space to do so, where the damage threshold is so much lower to take a knockout.
All right, so if the Sableye goes into the active this turn, that will allow for damage to knock out the Curly, which would leave 40 damage, correct?
Which is our perfect mathematics that we worked out earlier for managing to get the KO on the Gardevoir with the Charizard, right?
Exactly. So Charizard with Defiance Band, right? So that could be interesting there. The Defiance Band, there is 2 of them in the list. We've seen 1 being used, so 1 has been discarded. The other one, I believe, is still in the deck.
So there's the Beach Court Retreat, and now we're going to see the mathematics masters at work.
This is the fun bit. This is where the Sable and the Zard come together. So
oh, they've gone for an escape rope.
Okay.
I see. They've not gone for it yet. They want to thin a little bit more, grab a few more cards in hand before they decide to go in on an attack. And oh!
Is that a concede?
Oh my goodness, that's a concede!
So Kai is going to be taking it, just recognizing that they couldn't get enough damage. Kai going to be taking the win there. An amazing performance from him. The unfavorable matchup, Gardevoir EX's hardest matchup in the common meta spread. And we see him take the lead there. Ukash, valiant effort, but just really struggled to keep the tempo up throughout.
Really didn't. Kai's clearly practiced that one a lot, and they know exactly the method to the madness of being able to use every card in their arsenal to combat the powerhouse that is Lost Zone Zard.
Well, I can't help but be a bit excited. You know, it's my local boy, Kai. We are trying to be as unbiased as possible here, but we do have some favorites. But I'm sure Ukash will go on and do amazing stuff. He looked incredible out there. His Defiance Band idea, I think that's brilliant in the Lost Zone box. But just not quite able to keep up with the tempo there.
Not yet, but they're not out of day 2 yet. So I'm wishing all the best of luck to Ukash going forward to the next round. Fingers crossed for you, friend.
So there we go. Kai will be making day 2. That was kind of like a pseudo winning in. Like the next round is the winning in, but of course, if you can get the win to send you through to day 2 earlier, it does help you in the next day because you've got more wins under your belt to try and get through to that top 8, especially after seeing so few players on 7 wins.
Yeah, exactly that. So there's still all to play for, still lots of pressure, but Kai can relax a little bit. But if they really want to be making the top, which I'm sure everyone does, then they're still going to be playing to the best of their ability. Never underestimate Kai.
So there's going to be quite a lot of Gardevoir EX at the top, I believe, because we've seen a few of the top players using it. We know Tord is up there, probably on about 6, maybe 7 wins now in round 8. So Gardevoir EX, the one to watch. And as you can see, it is a technical deck. There's a lot of forward thinking, timing things at the right time, managing resources. We know from Tord at EUIC, mismanagement of resources can often be the difference between winning and losing a game. It's tough to control those supporters, the stadiums, and use them at the right time.
It is, but that's why we see that these players are the practiced ones. They've refined everything to an art. Good
pun. That was unintentional, wasn't it?
No, I'll pretend. I wish I could pretend. No.
Very good, very good.
Gardevoir pun, got it in there. But they really have. They've got this down to a fine art, and you can see exactly a refined art. You can see there exactly why these players are at the top and how they're managing those matchups and why these streams are so valuable for you guys at home as well. You now know. You've had the masterclass from Kai. You know how to beat Lost Zone Zard with Gardevoir. A little bit of skill, a sprinkle of luck, and you just got to be Kai.
I want to show you a little bit more about that Gardevoir list. I think the wonderful Shay will be telling you why Gardevoir is so good, and then we'll get to chat to Kai. Definitely stick around.
Gardevoir EX might be considered the best EX card we have in format right now, proving just how crazy of a card it really is. Its Psychic Embrace ability allows you to attach as many Psychic Energy from your discard pile to your Psychic Pokemon as often as you'd like. But you do have to put 2 damage counters on the Pokemon you attach those energies to. This means if you have 5 energy in your discard pile, you can essentially do whatever you like and power up any of your attackers like Zacian V, Brainwave Gardevoir, or even the Gardevoir EX itself. The Courier itself can really help out here too, since they have the Refinement ability, which allows you to discard 1 card from your hand to draw 2 more. Perfect! Skysteel Stone can also be used as Zacian upgrade a massive KO, so you can take an extra prize card while doing so too. Perfect for letting you get back in the game, since Gardevoir can be a little bit slow to get out the gate, but once it does, it is very hard to stop, and quite honestly, I would be terrified of it here at this event. But that's our quick look there at Gardevoir EX, so don't go anywhere because we're going to have our next round up soon.
Good evening, Pokemon fans and trainers out there. Welcome back to our coverage here of the Malmo Regional Championships. I'm here with the winner of our last ride, Kai Wainwright. Kai, how you doing, my friend?
I'm very good. So you haven't made day 2 in the last 2 events, so I'm pretty happy to get it again, right?
Yeah, now you made day 2. Now you're one of the few players who have fortunately made that and crossed the barrier now. So how do you feel going into your next round? Is it a play? Is it a chill out? Or are you still going as serious to make yourself in a better position?
I think we just go all the way, right? Because, I mean, the further you get, the more you have to win. Like in Top Cut, you have to win every round. You can't just ID in Top Cut, right? So you might as well start winning now, right?
No, yeah, and of course it'll put you in a better position for tomorrow as well, and you can take it all the way. But let's talk about the matchup.
Yeah.
Now, we've been hearing time and time again that Lost Box is favorable into Gardevoir. We haven't seen this on stream. Yeah, and you played it really well, with the Cresselia and, getting the energies down and making sure that you could heal it off to maximize the full potential.
Yeah, definitely. So it's I don't don't think it's that bad, the matchup, like, because I was really shocked when I saw the American regional results, like all the Guardians are losing left, right, center. Because when I played it, I thought, oh, I mean, it's obviously not good. And if they have, the turbo with turn 1 Greninja, okay, everything, I mean, you're losing every time. But like, and if they get it, they get it, right? But we're lucky that, I mean, if they go all over the place, then it's fine. But like early Zacian is like a fat attacker, and if they're taking 2 prizes on your Zacian, at least your routes live to see the next day, right? And so it's not that bad, and the Gardevoir is huge, right? With the 300 HP. So if we're allowed to get to the point where we can get the guys out, then it's usually fine. But
and utilizing that Cresselia, as I said before, able really to heal all that damage off the Gardevoirs, the baby Gardevoir and the Gardevoir EX. Is Cresselia the main way that you approach that matchup?
Most definitely, yes. Yeah. So, I think so. Shimura Daichi, he played in like a Champions League tournament, and he actually even played 2 Cresselia. I mean, I don't think it was the right play. He did do well, but like I think that's how strong Cresselia is. And even in the mirror, it's good, right? So it's a tech that's good everywhere. So that's what, and the Crest, like, because the Lost Box, especially Lost Box, the energy is like the weak point of the deck, right? You only get 1 retreat, so if you can go off the energy and just make it, you can like create really weird board states. And the HP is like super. You have to use the Defiant Van to kill.
Yeah. So. We saw the Schultz off earlier, Robin versus Philip, and Philip played the 2 Cresselia. It was such an interesting inclusion, and it just makes sense with all this Lost Box running about to include that second. But let's go back to the Gardevoir and why you picked it.
Yes.
Obviously, favorable matchups into your big chunkier guys like Lugia with the Sky Seal Stone, or say Duraludon VMAX that's been running around as well. Why Gardevoir for you?
So I was on the fence. So Gardevoir just feels like really powerful, right? And it's fun to play, and you just sort of smash everything. And so it was between this and like Fusion Mew, but I thought, okay, maybe like this has Mew and 4 VIP passes, close enough, right? And if you set up, there's like people just sort of watching. Go, well, I mean, I guess you have it, right?
Yeah.
You get to play Roxanne, it's like really good. So
now you had a breakthrough year last year, and Mew was like your deck. I see you play Mew all the time, and Mew was that just your thing, and you took it all the way last year as well. So many good achievements. So why did you stray away from the Mew and pick Gardevoir?
So at first, I mean, the matchups just seem better for Mew, and overall the power level is like much higher, right? So that's mainly why I switched, and it feels almost like Palkia, where you could just do anything. You have Spread, you have Boss, the Roxanne. I mean, the only thing you can't do is Boss and Roxanne, which you can half do a Crest, but right? And you can have Sky Seal to cheap prizes, and you have everything, right? So you might as well just play Guardi,
Going back to your breakthrough year, now a lot of our viewers will know that they've seen your name around, all these high achievements. And going back to that last year, what was the big difference? What was that real breakthrough moment that you had, and you were just high flying?
So before that year, I played online on Limitless tournaments, right? And so I started playing online tournaments there and thought, well, I mean, if I could beat the guys here, I could beat them at regionals, right? So, I mean, so the online tournaments definitely help because you get to play consistently against like good players, right? Because you can play players from anywhere like Brazil or the States or anything. So it really helps playing against good players because they make you like ask questions, like ask you really like interesting questions and like approach matchups in really interesting ways. So I think that was like how I improved a lot as a player. And then,
nice, Okay, well, going back to this event, let's just bring up a graphic to see what I would play in this event. Take us through this deck.
Okay. I have to read cards. I like Sobble. Sobble's like a really good consistency card. So like, keep calling to get out the Rapid Strike guys.
Oh no, I got to correct you there. It's not a Sobble, it's a Manaphy.
Oh no, okay. okay. I have to read cards.
You're no stranger to having to read that card. A lot of players that I came up against they thought, have you drawn this?
No, I remember seeing the promo on Card Market, and that's about it.
I struggled to find that Manaphy the day before the tournament. Exactly. Pulling Currents is so deadly. Putting your opponent's opponent's basic Pokemon from their hand onto the
that is
bench.
good. That's
so
very
have
strong.
A nice little Pokemon to gust up and use from the block Snorlax.
Oh, that's a very good actually. It's very good. I like that actually. And people can play. It's really hard to play around hand, right? Especially with cards growing and and stuff like that. So I like that. Yeah.
Well, thinking about Gardevoir against this, we saw the inclusion for Penny.
Yes.
So Penny is such an easy way to get around stuff like this and Mawile. But going back to EUIC.
Yes.
What did you play?
I played Fusion Mew.
You played Fusion Mew.
Yeah.
Okay, you went back. Why so?
So at the time before the tournament, I was like testing, Lugia and Guardi, and so like I hadn't quite figured out, the Guardi list because that came like after the tournament. And tried Fusion Mew. I was like, okay, we're beating Lost Box. If we can beat Lost Box, right, it should be fine. Because if I played with like Deoxys and what's the temple? Crystal Cave and Switch Cart, right? So you can they always target your Genesect. So if you can use Crystal Cave and Switch Cart, you can heal 60, which is huge. And they can't handle Deoxys. Like, it's almost as good as Cresselia, but not quite. But you know that kind of thing, right?
Oh, nice.
And you can punish really weak setups with Fusion Mew, right?
Yeah.
So that was the idea into EUIC. We unfortunately managed to lose to Path Muse because Path is strong.
You went full aggression.
So, we just lost there. And so, I mean, if you're both going to lose to Path, then you might as well pick Ardy. So that's why
I'd love to ask you how you would come up against this. What's your game plan? Okay, I've blocked Snort. Let's go through a hypothetical.
Okay.
I've started Snorlax.
Yeah.
I've benched a Rotom and another Snorlax. How are you getting out of how are you getting out of 3 bosses and say a catcher?
Oh, so wait, what demo am I playing?
You're playing Fusion Mew.
Fusion Mew. Oh, okay, this is interesting. I think we just start off with a Mew and like maybe Max Miracle a bit. A Max Miracle if we can get it. Well, no, so Psychic Leap, and you have Meloetta to try, but not looking good.
I'm really challenging you.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm really putting you through your paces.
Which is good, yeah. No, we only played 2 boss as well and Rope. So it's good, yeah. And you have the Forest Seal Stone because it's at the Pot Helmet as well.
Yeah.
You have Horns and Genesect's always getting stuck.
Maybe not the pick for today, but certainly it was the pick for me.
Definitely an interesting match.
Yeah, for sure.
I like it.
Well, Kai, going back to your year last year, what was your secret towards testing? You had that breakthrough year, like I said. You come up with all of these great results, and from a player who has maybe played locals, I know you very well from playing locals, of course, playing cups from up and down the tournament. Time and practice and the effort you put in, you get better, but. What was the breakthrough you had towards your testing and preparation in tournaments?
So it's more, I think, if you can figure out like the matchup in like terms of like a flowchart, and you can do the same thing every time in the matchup, then that like helps you win a lot more, right? Because you just know what to do. And if you can figure something that actually works, so it's like Gardevoir is one of the decks like that, right? Like because of Curlier, the deck is like you see so many of the cards. Usually you can do what you want to.
Sure.
That makes sense, right? So you can just learn to do certain patterns, if that makes sense. And the sequencing you just sort of learn, right? And like the other deck like is like Rapid Strike Urshifu, right? Which is why people kept playing that deck. So I actually started playing that online with like Moltres and so that, or like even Fusion Mew, right?
Yeah.
But where do you put the fusion energies and what matchups and why? Like you put them on one prizes or something like that, right? So if you can, or Palki's another one like that, right? Because of the Drizzles, you basically do the same thing every game. So if you actually like watch me play like 10 times, I'll do the same thing like almost 9 out of 10, apart from the weird stuff. So that helps a lot. So if you get to the point where you can figure that out and say figure out the mirror match and figure out how to win the mirror match, then like you just have a better deck than everyone else and you can beat the mirror, right? So
well, there you go, trainers. Just learning your matchups is the secret there, picking them the strongest deck. But going towards your testing approach.
Yeah.
Now you say you learn the matchups meticulously, but what is your secret towards testing? Do you test with a group of friends or do you test online?
So recently I've been testing with friends, but before that I used to play on online tournaments because that way is like you're playing an actual tournament. Like it's what better practice is there than an actual tournament, right?
Of course.
And the players are, they're going to the regionals and that, and especially in the later stage of tournaments. So, but if you can find a group of friends that like willing to like just keep doing the same matchup, that's like obviously really good because they can like tell you off or you'd figure out something and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, let's get on a higher level than testing, even again. So, tell us a bit of background about yourself. Where are you from? Where do you play locally? Who are your crowd?
Oh, okay. So I'm from Southeast London, so I usually play in the London area, and going around south, like around there. So I usually play. So there's a shop called Rule Zero that I usually play at, like it's a couple of Thursdays or whatever. So there's a league. There's go there. So there's a couple of like leagues popping up in London, and there's one in Westfield as well. So, yeah, I'm mostly around there, and then
yeah, nice little community, and there's communities all around the UK as well. So it's always beneficial to get yourself involved and get yourself testing and preparing for these massive tournaments. But thank you so much, Kai. I hope you have all the best luck, going into your next round and tomorrow as well. But for now, let's have a quick break before our round 9.